What if the number your super fund is telling you to aim for is completely wrong, mate? Like not just a little bit off, actually backwards. Because everyone's got some random retirement number floating around in their head, 1 million, 2 million. Just keep investing and hope for the best, but almost nobody can actually explain where that number came from. And the crazy part is the amount you really need to never work again might be way lower than you think. Most people are just guessing. Ask 10 Aussies how much they need to retire and you'll hear the same stuff every time. Probably a couple million, whatever my super app says, which honestly is the scariest answer because most of these numbers have zero maths behind them, mate. They're just vibes. Super funds also love showing these giant retirement targets that make people feel like they'll never get there. But the whole thing becomes way simpler once you stop asking, how much do I need to save? And start asking, how much does my life actually cost every year? Because your retirement number is literally just based on your spending. Once you know that, the whole thing turns from some emotional guess into basic maths. Now, before I tell you the actual number, you need to understand something called the 4% rule. This is basically the foundation of modern retirement maths. The idea is simple. If you've got a diversified investment portfolio, and yeah, mate, your super counts, you can withdraw around 4% per year, and historically your money should last 30 years or more. In a lot of cases, it actually keeps growing because you're mostly living off the returns instead of burning through the principal. This comes from something called the Trinity study from the US back in the late 90s. People have tested it, debated it, updated it for decades, and honestly the rule still holds up pretty well. And here's the formula, mate. This is the whole game. Annual spending divided by 0.04 equals your number. That's it. So if your lifestyle costs 50 grand a year, you need around 1.25 million invested. If you spend 80 grand a year, that's around 2 million. 40 grand a year, around 1 million. See what's happening? The number isn't random anymore. It's entirely based on how expensive your lifestyle is. One little caveat though, if you want to retire really early, like 45 or 50, you'd probably use something closer to 3.5% just to give yourself more buffer because your retirement has to last longer. So yeah, the number goes up, but at least now you know exactly why. Now here, where Australia actually gives us a massive advantage, mate. Super is ridiculously tax effective. Contributions are taxed at 15%, earnings are taxed at 15%, and once you retire and start withdrawing after preservation age, it's basically tax-free. That's insane when you think about it. The downside is you can't touch it until around 60, so if you want to retire earlier, you need a second bucket outside super. Maybe ETFs, maybe property, maybe other investments. Think of it like this: bucket 1 is your super that sits there growing untouched until 60. Bucket 2 is the money that carries you through the years before that, and this is the part most people completely ignore: the age pension. If your assets are under certain thresholds, the government actually tops up your retirement income. A full pension for a single person is roughly 28 grand a year, couples around 42 grand combined. Even getting a partial pension changes the maths massively because your super no longer has to fund your entire lifestyle. And when people finally calculate this properly, they realize their number can be way lower than they thought. Alright, mate, let's walk through some real examples because this is where it clicks. Imagine a frugal retiree spending around 40 grand a year, retiring at 67, owning their home and getting the full age pension. If the pension already covers 28 grand, their super only needs to produce the remaining 12 grand. 12,000 divided by 0.04 with a decent safety buffer and you're looking at roughly 500 grand. Not 2 million. 500,000. Now take a comfortable retired couple spending about 70 grand a year. They retire at 65 and get a partial pension covering maybe 20 grand of that lifestyle. Their super now only has to fund 50 grand per year, which works out to around 1.3 million. Still a lot, sure, but way more realistic for a dual-income household over a full career. Then you've got the lifestyle retiree, mate, spending 100 grand a year, retiring early at 58, no pension eligibility, wanting full freedom. In that case, the portfolio has to do all the heavy lifting, and using the safer 3.5% withdrawal rate, you're looking at around 2.85 million. That's where the big numbers actually become real. And notice how different all those retirement targets are. Completely different lives, completely different numbers. Which proves the point: there is no magical retirement number for everyone. It all comes down to spending. Also, something people massively underestimate: even earning 10 grand a year doing part-time work in retirement reduces the amount you need invested by roughly 250 grand. That's years of extra work you might not actually need to do. Now there are 4 things people get wrong that can absolutely wreck their retirement plans if they ignore them. First one is investment options. Most Aussies are sitting in default balanced super funds returning maybe 6 to 7% long-term. But growth options can return closer to 8 or 9% over decades, obviously with more short-term ups and downs. Over 30 years, that difference can literally mean hundreds of thousands of dollars. So check what your money is actually invested in, mate. Second thing is fees. A 1% fee difference sounds tiny until you realize over a full working career it can cost you years of extra work. Literally years. Third is inflation. The lifestyle that costs 60 grand today might cost 90 grand in 20 years. The 4% rule already assumes some inflation, but you still need to think about it properly. And fourth is sequence of returns risk. Sounds fancy, but it's actually simple. If the market crashes right after you retire while you're withdrawing money, it can hurt your portfolio way more than a crash later on. That's why having some cash buffer when you retire matters so much. So mate, the entire thing really comes down to this one sentence. Figure out what your life costs every year, divide it by 0.04, then adjust for things like the pension or part-time income. That's your number. Not some random figure your super app throws at you. Seriously, pull up your super balance right now and test it. Look at your projected balance at retirement, multiply it by 0.04, and ask yourself one simple question: would that actually cover my lifestyle? Takes maybe 30 seconds, and honestly it's probably more useful than most retirement projections people spend hours looking at. Because the earlier you understand your real number, the more options you give your future self, mate. There's a free calculator linked in the description where you can plug in your own numbers and see exactly where you stand. And if you want more videos breaking down money, investing, and retirement stuff without the boring finance jargon, subscribe and turn notifications on. Catch you in the next one.